They found in this study this large and sustained, quote, erosion of opposition to unionization among non-union workers, replaced by this rise of uncertainty or kind of ambivalence, union curiosity. I don't really know, but maybe this could be something that could benefit me.
If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have customers in here. You wouldn't be making $11 million a year, CEO Juggernaut. You wouldn't be able to spend $6 million on fireworks in New York City, or have share in your Thanksgiving Day parade. We're the reason why you have all that stuff.
4 years go by pretty fast, in the blink of an eye. And like they say, you hear 1 minute, gone the next, and that's literally what they're trying to do to our jobs.
We give to people who support labor. If they do not support labor, we do not give to them. And there are Republicans and Democrats both who don't get any money from us because they do not support us on legislation.
You're listening to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, produced by the Labor Radio Podcast Network, laborradionetwork.org. I'm Chris Garlock. On today's show, labor policy analyst Sophie Mariam on the rise of union curious, support for unionization among America's frontline workers on the labor exchange. The UFCW 3000 podcast reports on Macy's unfair labor practice strikes. Then, is Stellantis planning to send jobs from Sterling Heights to a plant in Mexico? We'll find out on the UAW 1700 podcast when Mike and committee members discuss new information they've received. And in our final segment from the BCTGM Voices Project, bakery workers' union retirees got welcome news on July 22nd when Union President Anthony Shelton sent out a memo announcing, "Our money is in the bank. The promise of pension reform has been realized for more than 100,000 BCTGM retirees." That's all ahead on this week's edition of the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. But first, here's Harold with this week's installment of Shows You Should Know.
Thanks, Chris. Harold Phillips here again, folks, the guy who does the tweets and the grams and the Facebooks, I guess, with some shows you should know for the week of August 4th. Andrew and Ben talk with Judith Steppen Norris about the Communist Party's complex role in the creation of the CIO and its pioneering role in the organizing drives of the era on Fragile Juggernaut. Mike looks at the Amazon labor union's leadership election, Illinois banning captive audience meetings, the UAW endorsing Kamala Harris for president, and more on labor force. The Chicago Teachers Union fights the 2025 Chicago Public Schools budget, and Palestinian trade unionists speak out on Labor Express Radio. Anna Fishko discusses exploring identity and found families in Orphan Black Echoes, 4D printed body parts, what narratives she's drawn to, and more on the Writers Guild of America West's 3rd and Fairfax. Alex looks at Robert's Rules of Order and the way the rules govern the National Association of Letter Carriers Convention in Boston, as well as local branch meetings on classes of mail. And that's just a few of the great labor radio shows and podcasts that have come out over the past week. If you're looking for more, search the hashtag Labor Radio Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Back to you, Chris.
This is the Labor Exchange on KGNU, Denver, Boulder, and Fort Collins. Find us online on KGNU's website and your favorite podcast app by searching for the KGNU Labor Exchange. I'm your host, Robert Lindgren, with the Colorado AFL-CIO and Denver Newspaper Guild, Local 37074. Our guest today is Sophie Mariam, a labor policy analyst for the Colorado Fiscal Institute. It's a nonprofit that provides independent analysis of fiscal and economic issues facing Colorado. We're discussing, among other things, a study recently published last month by the Economic Policy Institute titled The Rise of the Union Curious, Support for Unionization Among America's Frontline Workers. Welcome to the Labor Exchange, Sophie.
Thanks, Robert.
So I asked you on the show in part because of this new study about the rise of the union curious. It found key differences across different demographics on union favorability and some interesting findings. Did you have anything you wanted to lift up broadly about the report's findings?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing to me about this survey data is that while in broad strokes, I'd say we know that generic union approval has been rising nationally, but this does contrast with, union density, which when I think they compared 2008 to 2022 nationally, there was about a 2% decline. And in Colorado, I think it's interesting when you look at this data as well, because we've seen a rise in new petitions with the NLRB to form a union, but we haven't necessarily seen like a huge boost in union density following this. I think a lot of people would call it a surge in union curiosity and union support following the pandemic times. But I think what this report really tells us is that harnessing this energy of not necessarily more people being pro-union and ready to organize and ready to go do it on their own in their workplace, but more willing, kind of getting back to what I just said, like curious, willing to kind of understand what is a union? What could this do for my workplace? And I think this report really suggests to us that, and I'll quote them, younger workers are less opposed to unionization than older workers, with this age gap explained by higher levels of union support and more union curiosity among younger workers. So we know that young workers, and we can break down some of the demographics here, but especially women and workers of color are very likely to fall into this union curious group now. But that doesn't mean that we just kind of sit on that. If you're someone in the movement or organizers out there, I think this tells folks organizing and folks hoping to capitalize on that, it's a ripe time to educate and organize and help increase awareness about what unions can actually do. Because while this told us that there's a rise in this union curiosity, some of the findings were actually really interesting around what they actually thought unions could do in terms of the outcomes that they would see. So a lot of people thought, there could be a medium to sizable impact on their wages and benefits, quote, a little bit or a lot, but around subjects like job security, workplace safety, and training, other issues that anyone, with a little bit more experience researching unions and labor knows that unions can lead to improvements in outcomes for, especially for job safety, for example. Folks didn't think that unionization would have any impact on that in their workplace, which I think tells us that there's a lot of education to be done about what the benefits of unions could be and what this could actually mean for these people's workplaces.
In the study, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing it, but in the study, they define union curious as workers interested in but unsure about unions. And they also identified like a decline in direct opposition to unionization among non-union workers, but it kind of falls into this like, yeah, they're probably good, but I don't know if I need one yet, kind of like an ambivalence almost. Do you see anything in the data around, that shift from opposition to, more curious or interested?
Yes, I think that was what made this study unique and interesting is we see a lot of polls, and I think it's important to distinguish here the difference between the polls you hear about a lot, like 70%, like more Americans support unions than support hot dogs, I think is the common statistic you'll hear people cite, and I think it is 70%. But that's, supporting unions in general versus what distinguished this study is they were asking specifically about unions at your workplace. So what's encouraging is, we have seen workers become less resistant to unions in general over time. But when non-union workers are asked, do you personally want a union in your workplace? There's generally more uncertainty and weaker support. And that's kind of what they found here. And that's not shocking. But they found in this study this large and sustained, quote, erosion of opposition to unionization among non-union workers, replaced by this rise of uncertainty or kind of ambivalence, union curiosity. I don't really know, but maybe this could be something that could benefit me.
Our guest today has been Sophie Mariam, a labor policy analyst for the Colorado Fiscal Institute. This has been the Labor Exchange.
Well, Hello, everyone, and welcome to our local UFCW 3000 podcast. In November 2023, on Black Friday, and then again in January starting on MLK Day 2024, Macy's workers with UFCW 3000 went on an unfair labor practice strike. After 12 days of striking and a call for a boycott of Macy's stores, UFCW 3000 members reached an agreement with Macy's and ratified a new contract at the end of January, addressing many of the members' top concerns. The recordings, interviews, and information on today's podcast are from conversations before, during, and just after those strikes.
Hi, my name is Stacy Poor, and I work at the Alderwood Macy's, and I've been here 34 consecutive years, plus 8 another time. And Macy's needs to give us a livable wage, good health care, and good conditions in the store. In my department, we used to have 6 full-time people. Now you're lucky if you're by yourself, and if you get help. And conditions need to be better, and wages, health care, and staffing. I mean, there's always theft. You don't know what people are going to do. Some customers can be mean and say it's all your fault. So that needs to improve as well.
That was UFCW 3000 member Stacy last November before the big Black Friday holiday shopping weekend, when our local Macy's workers went out on an unfair labor practice strike. I was able to visit the strike line and talk to striking workers about why they voted overwhelmingly to approve the strike authorization and hear about the top issues at the bargaining table. In January, after Macy's still didn't show up to negotiations with a fair offer and continued committing unfair labor practices, workers at the Alderwood store went back out, this time on an open-ended unfair labor practice strike. They said they were willing to strike for as long as it took, and after 9 days, workers reached a tentative agreement with Macy's and ratified a new contract. That new contract included the highest ratification bonus of any Macy's contract in the country this contract cycle, and protection from Macy's harshest takeaways. Workers were able to protect the important MLK Day paid holiday for current employees, which Macy's had threatened to take away with no replacement before. Workers were able to protect and actually improve a wage structure that guarantees workers stay above minimum wage even as it's rising quickly to keep up with inflation. And a top issue for workers was safety. After a bargaining team member and shop steward Lisa was put on leave after calling 911 over a shoplifting incident, the new contract includes agreement over workers' right to bring up safety issues or call for help without fear of discipline or retaliation. As you'll hear from the worker interviews myself and colleagues did for this episode, that was a huge issue for everyone.
Well, first of all, it's all about the wages. It's my main thing. Safety, too, because I work by the mall entrance. People are coming in stealing. You never know what's coming in that door anymore. And I understand they have to protect their assets, but we're part of their assets, too. If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have customers in here. You wouldn't be making $11 million a year, CEO Juggernaut. You wouldn't be able to spend $6 million on fireworks in New York City or have share in your Thanksgiving Day parade. What are the reasons why you have all that stuff? So come on, give us a living wage so we can, keep it up. We enjoy our jobs. I've been here almost 16 years. I'm loyal. Why can't you be loyalty and give me a little more money?
My name is Madison Reeves.
Karina Romero.
And I work at Macy's. I've been working at Macy's for around 7 years. We want more health care. I don't have health care through Macy's because I can't afford it. It's outrageously priced. We also don't feel safe at work. We work in the fragrances department. There's a lot of theft. We have been physically shoved by thieves, and Macy's is doing nothing to improve how safe we feel at work. And so that's why we are striking for a fair contract.
Yes, and to add to that, we are also striking for better wages. Recently, we've hired a ton of holiday hires, finding out that they are coming in at the same wage as an employee who's been here for 5 years, as an employee who's been here for 7 years. So we don't think that's fair that they're coming in at the same wage as somebody who has been dedicated their life to Macy's, spending their time here. So we feel like we deserve a better wage increase. We've been here, we dedicate our lives to Macy's to help them get, their goals and their yachts and everything. Right. So better wages is something that definitely we're going to negotiate and talk about with the strike.
If you have any questions or you want to know more about our union, go to our website at ufcw3000.org. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and thank you for listening. Have a fabulous day.
Local 1700, what's going on? We're back at it this time. This podcast, I think, is very, very important, very, very special. So I'm going to encourage you to listen very carefully. I did post something on social media, and I generally don't post on social media, but it was something that we need to discuss, and that's this Mexico situation that's playing out right before our eyes. Where we at as it stands today, the Mexico plant has been there, always was there, because they used to build, or they do still build, a 2500, 3500, the heavy-duty Rams. And at some point, we were under impression, as our numbers, because our Ram truck, when I talk about our Ram, I'm talking about the DT and the upcoming Bev, has always done great numbers. The Bev haven't been put out yet, but have always done great numbers. Hell, we won Truck of the Year for 3 years in a row. Sales has been great. And the expectation was that even when we build at top capacity, that we wouldn't be able to handle the overflow. From our understanding, from what I was told, what the committee was told, at some point that any overflow will be going down to Warren Truck. That was the discussion on the table. Since then, I've become aware, not fully aware, but aware that there was alternative motives or plans and work that I couldn't get a complete answer from. And I actually reported back out to our membership on pretty much the last 10 podcasts that I continue to ask the plant manager what's going on with eliminating the shelf or anything negative as it impacts our plant, which would include sending our work to somewhere else outside of the United States of America, and even including sending it anywhere inside the United States of America. I wanted some clarity and I want some confirmation. And I've told you guys for many weeks, I couldn't get a straight answer, and finally I did get an answer that yes, there will be some offloading of the overflow, but there would not be an elimination of a shift. Since then, I became even more aware, and that's where I started to post on social media about the Mexico situation. What I've been told and what has been confirmed is the Mexico plant the plant in Mexico is been expanded so they can build all trim levels of the DT, and that would include the Bev. The Bev haven't came out yet, but that would include the Bev. So that means plans are being made right now, currently today, to build not only every trim level that we have, but also the trim level that we're still in the middle of trying to launch, which is the Bev. And this is very concerning, very, very concerning.
This situation is serious. We just challenged management as early as a few hours ago to take us to the issues. Let's go right to the floor so we can talk with the operator so we can see what the issues are. Every time we demand that, it's always some sort of excuse that they use because they don't want us to see that the issues, what's going on for real. Right now, they just trying to do everything that they can do to put this situation on us. Do we take some blame in this? If you know you missing parts, then stand up and take the blame in it. But we not here to cast blame because the attendance is better. As crazy as this might sound, the attendance since I've been at SHAP, we running pretty decent. And that's crazy to say, but I'm proud of y'all. So if we can get on this podcast and say, come to work, we can get on the podcast and say, thanks for coming to work. But now they're just deliberately sabotaging our livelihoods. We sat across from all the center managers today and we just asked them, put all the bickering and all the fighting and all of that to the side and let's work together to deliver a product. And what that means is our people will come to work, just get our people the correct tools and stuff that we need to work. Our people will come and build a product, give us the correct tools and the correct parts to build the product. So we challenging them on that note, and we applaud y'all for the hard work and dedication, but we just want you to open your eyes up and see that 4 years go by pretty fast in the blink of an eye. You and like they say, you hear 1 minute, gone the next, and that's literally what they trying to do to our job. And for them to build a plant in Mexico and set a ram out in front of that plant that they don't even build. Right. The ram that they got sitting out there is our ram. So you used to be able to say, if you look at a ram and you see it on a road, some kind of way, you put a part on that truck, some shift, somebody built that truck. They trying to make it to where you can't say that any longer. Like I said, his reports is out to the news. It's out to everybody. So we have to do the same with just coming, showing up, doing what we got to do. This is a serious situation that in my short time I haven't seen before. I'm one of the spoiled kids, y'all, because I know somebody, what that mean? I ain't seen nothing but overtime since I've been here. And it's almost like your parent keeps saying, if you do that, I'm going to whoop you. I'm going to whoop you, and it never come. We've been saying it for so long. Value the job. It's change is coming, but all you continue to see is overtime. Trust me. In my little run, I've seen overtime, and they close the door maybe a few months, and then the next thing you know, it's a free fall for overtime. We're telling you the writing is not on the wall no more. They done built the building for it. So it done went past writing on the wall. They have a whole facility. Now we have to stand up, unite, not bicker amongst each other, and let's make this work. Let's put our best foot forward. Blood, sweat, and tears. Solidarity red every day in our actions. And let's move forward, and let's try to keep our truck right here at home.
This is the BCTGM Voices Project. Just after 11 o'clock a.m. on July 22nd, 2024, a wire transfer of $3.3 billion in relief funds from the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, also known as the PBGC, to the BNC Industry International Pension Fund was completed. The fight for the Butch-Lewis Act, which began in 2017 and passed as a pension provision in the American Rescue Plan in 2021, was realized. President Shelton sent a memo to U.S. BCTGM local unions that day announcing, "Our money is in the bank. The promise of pension reform has been fulfilled for millions of retirees, including more than 100,000 BCTGM retirees who are facing 45% cuts to their benefits over the next 10 years. Today, BCTGM retirees can breathe a sigh of relief that their pension benefits are secure and will remain solvent and secure well into the future. In this recording, we hear from BCTGM leaders who worked for many years to save our pensions. Listen in to remember what we went through and learn what to expect from the BNC Pension Fund going forward."
Yes, Harry Kaiser. I'm a retired executive assistant to the president. So the battle to save the pension, the solvency of the pension fund, and most importantly, the benefits of our retirees and future retirees is going back many, many years, going back to the time of President Hurt, with the whole issue of the fund facing significant problems because of the 2008 recession that was caused by Wall Street fraud and the bankruptcy of our largest employer, the old Hostess brands, which was also brought about because of fraud and incompetence on the part of the Wall Street crowd that took over Hostess after its first bankruptcy. And so the fund, like many multi-employer pension funds, were facing significant challenges for the solvency and benefits of the members, and facing issues of potentially very severe cuts. And President Hurt began the process of working with our fund and with the pension fund staff, trying to come up with solutions to the problems. And then the issue and actions were taken, important, strong actions were taken because of the leadership of President Hurt at the time, and followed by President Durkee. And but the effort to find a legislative solution, because many pension funds were facing the same problems that the BNC fund were facing in terms of long-term solvency and potential benefit cuts for retirees. And so the effort really began in late 2017 when Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, the best friend, not just for the labor movement, but for our union in the United States Congress, he wanted to help work with the labor movement to find a solution, a legislative solution to protect the benefits and the long-term solvency of multi-employer pension funds. So that's where it all began.
President Shelton, when you say that you have been in this position for 4 years, I do recall when you first came into our office, being involved in politics was something that you were uniquely aware of. Our membership doesn't love that, and they don't love our positions on some things sometimes, but you know, you've now been here for 4 years. You are, as
part of this position, a executive board member at the AFL-CIO. So I'm wondering if you can just talk about what you've learned in the 4 years about why we as a union really have to be active and how this kind of situation has really informed that for you.
Yeah, I find that's very important how we spend our PAC money. And our PAC money does not come out of your union dues money. So nobody has to worry about that. It's all given on a voluntary basis. We give to people who support labor. If they do not support labor, we do not give to them. And there are Republicans and Democrats both who don't get any money from us because they do not support us on legislation. Matt Clark goes through it and gets an account of who's voted the proper way. That's who gets our money. And we do give a lot of money to people who support us. And we found out it's important because of how they vote in the Senate and the Congress to pass legislation. And there's 2 senators in Virginia that did support us during the strike. And they're not getting any money from us this year. And they were Democrats. So we do look at their performance and what they do.
For more on the activities of the BCTGM, go to bctgm.org.
And that is gonna do it for this week's edition of the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. Just a small sample of the amazing programs aired over the last week on more than 200 labor radio and podcast shows. They're all part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, shows that focus on working people's issues and concerns. We've got links to all the network shows, laborradionetwork.org. You can also find them. Use the hashtag LaborRadioPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, you can be part of the network and you don't even need a microphone. Labor Radio Podcast Network t-shirts are available. They're union made. You'll find them in all sizes and 2 colors at laborradionetwork.org. This podcast is recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement. The Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, edited this week by Patrick Dixon. I produce the show, and our social media guru, as always and forever, is Mr. Harold Phillips. For the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, this has been Chris Garlock. Stay active and stay tuned to your local Labor Radio Podcast show. We will see you next week.